Defying the Pope is about as serious as it gets in the Catholic Church. Now, a traditionalist movement says it's preserving the true faith, while the Vatican says the Society of St. Pius X has effectively placed itself outside the Church.
It's really been a novel event having such a large group be so brazen and open in their defiance of the Pope and the Vatican.
That's Justin McLellan. He's the Vatican correspondent for the National Catholic Reporter and has been following this story extensively. He talked to us from a Society of St. Pius X event in Switzerland. Justin is helping us understand who they are, why they're in conflict with the Vatican, and whether this dispute could become one of the biggest challenges of Pope Leo's young papacy. Could this conflict also be a sign of deeper tensions already simmering within the Catholic Church? But before we get to all of that, who are the Society of St. Pius X, or SSPX for short?
The SSPX is an ultra-conservative Catholic group that was founded in 1970 by a French Archbishop, Marcel Lefebvre, that essentially what it does is it rejects the church reforms that were brought about by the Second Vatican Council. So that was the church event that changed the Mass from being celebrated in Latin to the local language. And it also opened the church to further engagement with the modern world in many regards, including interreligious dialogue. And it just said that the church needs to be active, engaging, and open to the world rather than shut itself away from it. And so this society really rejects a lot of that sentiment and those teachings, and it's sought to keep the church in a pre-Vatican II state. And this has led to tensions with Rome and the Vatican, because those that is church teaching, the Second Vatican Council, and several popes have affirmed that teaching is church magisterium, and that in order to be Catholic you must abide by it, and that is what this group continues to refuse to do.
And when you compare that vision of the church to Pope Leo's vision, the gap seems pretty wide. But how far apart are they?
They are significantly different than the vision for the church that Pope Leo has. I think that where you see that most clearly is with the fact that Pope Leo is a missionary pope. So he was sent into the world, into the margins, into the peripheries of the world to serve the church. And he really advanced a Vatican II vision of the church, which is one that kind of is with the people. It gets its hands dirty, and it kind of learns how to walk with people in their faith. And while still entirely Catholic.
The trigger for all of this was the consecration of new bishops. In simple terms, a consecration is the ceremony where a priest becomes a bishop. In the Catholic Church, bishops form part of a chain of authority that Catholics believe stretches all the way back to the apostles. So when bishops are appointed without papal approval, it's not just an administrative issue, it's seen as a challenge to the church's authority itself.
So the fact that wasn't there, that really is a threat to this idea of apostolic succession, which is very key in Catholic teaching, that pretty much says that the responsibility and authority to govern the church which was handed down from Jesus to St. Peter, the first pope, and then handed down to each pope from that. The bishops receive their mandate from a direct descendant in terms of authority of Jesus. So to break from that is really to say, you are no longer part of this succession, and therefore you are no longer part of the church.
So in plain English, SSPX is now being treated as having placed itself outside the authority of the Catholic Church.
That the Vatican put out a declaration saying that the priests who were created bishops and those who made them bishops have been excommunicated, as well as all the people who formally adhere to the schism.
It's worth pausing briefly here. A schism is essentially a formal split within the church when a group breaks away from the church authority while still claiming to represent the authentic faith. Now, we've seen this happen many times before in the history of Christianity. So back to Justin now.
So that would include all of the priests who are members of the society, and it's left a little bit of wiggle room for the lay people. But essentially it has said that if you participate exclusively in ceremonies by this group, then you are no longer a member of the Catholic Church. So it's really wide-ranging in its consequences. It's left some space, particularly for the laity, for the non-priests and non-bishops. It's really been a novel event having such a large group be so brazen and open in their defiance of the Pope and the Vatican. So that means that the sacraments that they would offer, such as confession or marriage, are no longer valid. And for the lay people, that means that if they exclusively attend ceremonies presided over by the Society for St. Pius X, then they are no longer considered members of the Catholic Church.
Let's stop here again. Justin is saying this isn't simply a disagreement between the Pope and a conservative Catholic movement. The Vatican is effectively saying SSPX has crossed a line separating internal dissent from membership in the Church itself.
Yes, and I think one clarification is significant, is that what the Vatican is saying is not that we're kicking you out. They're saying you've kicked yourselves out. So what this declaration has done has just declared that an automatic excommunication has taken place. So it's really just a clarification of something that, they're saying that the moment that you created these bishops without the Pope's approval, that's when you ceased to be Catholic. And so the Vatican is just communicating that.
In the days before the consecrations, Pope Leo made a last-ditch effort to stop them. He sent a letter warning SSPX not to cross what the Vatican regarded as a red line in quite forceful language. So how unusual is that tone from Pope Leo?
It was a really startling letter in its force. Leo is really a mild-mannered pope. He's very calm. He's very cool, collected. He speaks in a rather deliberate fashion. So to see a letter with this, it really seemed like an impassioned plea to this group to not follow through with these illicit bishop consecrations. This group, the SSPX, is really flying in the face of that sentiment for Pope Leo. And so I think that that's why you see the force in this letter that he has expressed. He's saying, please turn back, do not do this, and calling it, an extreme sin.
How are the people attending these consecrations in Switzerland reacting to all of this?
These are people that they say that the Church has really drifted from its true teaching since the Second Vatican Council, and that they feel that they are truly the ones that are keeping the tradition of the Church alive. And so they say they feel that, even if the Pope does not recognize that, we hope that he will eventually see things from our point of view. But it's our duty to the truth of the Catholic tradition to, stay the course and to create these new bishops in order for them to grow their ranks and to continue, ministering to their faithful worldwide. So even though they know that could run grave risks, even to the point of excommunication, I think that they think that is a penalty that doesn't truly apply to them, because they feel that they are the true members of the Church, and that it's the Church itself that has drifted from its true teaching.
That's an important point. For many of the people involved, this isn't a political protest against the Vatican. It's the only expression of Catholicism they've ever known, and that helps to explain why pressure from the Vatican isn't necessarily changing minds. It feels like this story is about more than one group of Catholics. Does this reveal something bigger about the tensions currently running through the Church?
He doesn't want to set a precedent. There's a couple of thousands of them scattered throughout the world. So while I don't think that the Catholic Church or the Vatican is particularly worried that they could draw more detractors, so to speak, I think that it's more just placing an emphasis on church unity is something that is really top of mind for Leo.
This movement appears to be growing and attracting committed followers. What is it that makes SSPX different from other conservative Catholic groups?
So there are other conservative groups within the Church, such as Opus Dei, or I think of the Legionaries of Christ as another example, that tend to be more traditional in their view of Catholic doctrine. What sets the SSPX apart is in their outright rejection of some really key and fundamental church teaching. They also openly reject the notion supported by the Vatican that there should be a separation between church and state.
Now, while being up close with SSPX in Switzerland, Justin made some profound observations.
talking to people here, one thing that I've noticed is how many young people are here and how many of those people have entirely been raised within this society. For a lot of people, it seems like there's not another point of reference, and for them to be Catholic is to be a member of the society. And so that's why, even under pressure from the Pope, they feel like, it's not only is their belonging to this society what's under threat, but it's really their entire Catholic faith and Catholic identity. It is a minority group, but it's very widespread, and they've become very vocal.
And that's where this story connects to a broader trend. Across politics and wider society, we've seen growing interest in movements built around identity and tradition. It sounds like Pope Leo is trying to hold together a church that contains very different visions of what Catholicism should be. Is that ultimately the challenge at the heart of this story?
Polarization within the church has been increasing, just as it has in society at large. And I think that that's why unity has been such a priority for Pope Leo. But certainly I think that you see now in a lot of seminaries, these young priests that are entering into the clergy tend to be a lot more traditionalist leaning, particularly in the United States and in France. A lot of people are noticing that younger people that are being drawn to the church are doing so precisely because they feel they can profess more traditionalist tendencies in that space.
Listening to all of this, it sounds as though Pope Leo's challenge isn't simply dealing with SSPX. It's managing a church that contains very different and sometimes competing visions of Catholicism.
People on the outside can see the church as a whole as very monolithic and see the whole institution as rather conservative. But even, once you're inside, people were very critical of Pope Francis for being overly progressive in some regards, and his predecessor, Pope Benedict, as being overly conservative.
The dispute between the Vatican and the Society of St. Pius X may involve only a small fraction of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. But as Justin McLellan points out, the issues at the heart of this conflict, tradition, authority, identity, and unity, reach far beyond a single movement. For Pope Leo, the challenge now isn't simply managing a schism, it's holding together a church being pulled in very different directions, while convincing Catholics they still belong to the same one. I'm Pablo Faudilias. Thanks for watching.